Hello.
Hey!
Happy May.
Welcome to May. Spring is definitely here. We've got a nice, cool, rainy day and tulips and daffodils.
Exactly. We've got a couple of seconds more to let people start joining us. We have a lot to talk about today.
Very full
So it's going to be fun. So while we're waiting for other people to join us, we're going to be talking today. This is our 24th anniversary this month, and we just have it's a big month. We have a lot going on, but we also have a super exciting thing we can't wait to talk to you about. So I hope you will join us, and I've got a couple of questions, but we have so much to tell you that I think it's going to spark some more conversation.
It's as we said, with it being our 24th anniversary, we're thinking a lot about the past, present, and future.
Exactly.
And so it's a bit to share about all of that.
Yeah, exactly. So let us know in the chat if you're here and if you have any burning questions. This is kind of like a larger conversation about, what's happened in the past 24 years in terms of modern quilting, which didn't even exist at that point. I mean, it's funny because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking that when we started, machine quilting was controversial.
Yeah, there was still resistance to people, especially the quilting. There were a lot of quilting shows and judges they were a little lukewarm about that.
Well, and I think there was also a prevailing culture at the time that machine quilting was second best. Mm-hmm. It was like if you really valued your quilt, you would hand quilt it, and that it wasn't equal in terms of it was kind of a shortcut that was not considered okay. Great. Oh, she finished her mystery quilt. That's exciting. Okay, so should we just dive in?
Let's dive in.
Oh yes, it is a cold and rainy day, Debbie Chen. It is. It absolutely is.
And
so, the first thing that I wanted to just jump in and say, because this is really is a big month for us, and I just I'm getting emotional even just thinking about it. But 12 years ago or 11 years ago, we were at a lecture in Madison, Wisconsin, and we were signing some of our books. And our daughter was sitting...
11 at the time.
Yeah, or she was maybe even 10 at the time. She was sitting kind of in the corner waiting for us so we could go to dinner and, playing on an iPad or something. And someone asked if she could sign their book also, which was so sweet. And then somebody else said, maybe she needs a book of her own. And we started thinking about it.
We were listening.
And we started thinking that there really weren't there weren't any kids sewing books that were written from the kids' perspective with kids making the project. It was all adults talking to children. It wasn't...
Yeah, there wasn't a very strong connection. It was either, when we looked at children's sewing books, they were either very childish or they were kind of just shooting over the head, just missing the mark of what kids really wanted. Even
to understand just how to operate a sewing machine and stuff. So anyway, we said to our daughter, she heard that comment and she said, "Oh, that's interesting." And we said, what if we did it as a family book and we had all of the proceeds go into your college fund? She was 10 or 11 at the time. And she said she thought that was a great idea.
Not that she had any idea what a college fund was at
that
age.
Exactly, but she just knew that money was coming to me. And so we forfeited our fee for the writing and the coordination, everything that we did. And
well, we forfeit it.
We put it all into her college fund.
Yes. So and we always say books aren't a get rich quick scheme.
No, no.
No, don't.
And we wrote this book, which with her, as a family. And that's her on the cover when she was 11 years old. And they kind of accelerated the timetable, and it was kind of stressful for all.
Understatement. We wrote this, we did an incredibly fast job.
And she sewed every project in the book and helped design all of the projects.
She learned to sew by doing this book with us. And
all of the proceeds that you all who have bought this book for 10 years, all of the proceeds went to her college fund.
And the reason she graduates this month. She's
graduating from college this month. And we thank you for having supported her. It was extremely helpful financially.
It made a
for
real
her to
difference.
be able to get through college without debt is not a small matter. So I hadn't planned to cry. But it was just, this has been on Amazon for, 10 years off and on. It's been, one of the best-selling children's books.
Still in print, a decade later, still selling well.
And she remains grateful for it. She gets it now at age 21. She gets that all of you helped her get through college through your support of this book. And so we sign, usually when she comes home, she signs the books. So if they sell while she's at college, that we'll have one with her signature in it. But
one of the things I love here is thank you.
You had to cry. It's just like, college is so expensive. She's getting a degree in chemical engineering with a minor.
She's not a textile person, but she knows how to sew.
Kid. And she's been the vice president of the Chemical Engineering Society and in a leadership role in her sorority and playing intramural soccer, and she's just really made the most of her college experience. And she's got a job all lined up that she's going to be starting with Quaker, as in Quaker Oats, Quaker Food Company. She'll be a chemical engineer working for them.
And she's...
So, okay, it's not just the others. But you understand is, if you had college debt or if you have had children, that, it's like, even if you're at a state university, bam, it's $120,000 to get a kid through college now.
Minimum.
So it's just, she gets these checks from the publisher, and, I just think it's like, what is this? This book is $21.95. It's like, it's $22 across thousands of people over 10 years.
And even if it's only a little bit of that, as royalties are coming. The thing that I'm so grateful for your support on many levels. She learned that she could do this. For many years, I don't think she didn't understand what she had done with us, but now looking back, she's proud of it. I actually think it helped her learn the time value of money.
Absolutely.
That you compound interest.
And you can work for things.
And that a little bit every quarter, a little royalty check every quarter, when invested, grows. And, at the time, as an 11-year-old, the idea of a college fund meant nothing. What she really wanted, she said, because we said the payment was going into this fund, she said, could I get an iPod?
She's like, could I just have a little bit of, when we're done with the book.
Remember iPods?
Yeah, could I just have an iPod? It was like an iPod Touch, I think, what it was. But then, to me, the other thing that was really special was, so she did this in 5th grade. She sewed every project and then dictated sidebars to me in the book. But then, I'll just never forget this. She went to school, and the school librarian had discovered it and put it in a special place in the library when she was in 5th grade. Okay, sobbing, cue the sobbing. And so at any rate, we had boys and girls. We wanted diversity within the book.
And I'm actually going to show a quick picture because one of the projects here was a simple pillowcase with this contrasting flange, and each of them, the idea was you would...
oh my gosh, look at her when she was 11.
You would embroider your name. This, at 21, is still her go-to friend gift.
Sorority sisters.
Camp counselors, sorority sisters, new apartment gift.
She hasn't slept on a regular pillowcase in, at least 11 years.
Nor have her friends. Like she makes these.
True.
I don't know how many. She'll come home for Christmas break or something like that and say, "Oh, Maddie has a birthday coming up.
Yeah.
I haven't made her a pillow yet, and a pillowcase," and she'll do that. So it's fun that 10 years later, it's still something that she loves, that aspect of making things and giving them to friends, which I think you probably all relate to.
And so even though she doesn't, sewing is not a huge hobby of hers, she made her 8th grade graduation dress.
Yeah. It's not a hobby of hers at all. It's
but
she does. She knows how to do it.
But she does the pillowcases. And there's her whole bedroom is all pillowcases and
she also developed incredible design. She's a really good designer.
Well, anyway, we don't want to go on and on.
But thank you. So that's the looking past and looking to the future. It's wonderful.
I wanted to just, we're going in 2 weeks for her graduation, and I feel like you're all going to be there with us because you've helped us get there. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Seriously, it has just meant so much to us, and it was so unexpected. So we thank you for that. But we are going to step back even further to May 18th, 1999, when Bill and I walked through the doors of the Javits Center in New York City with some business cards we had gotten from then Kinko's. And we said to each other, do you remember what we said to each other before we launched our business at this big international contemporary furniture fair?
If you're thinking what I'm thinking, it was if this works, great. If it doesn't, we don't tell anyone we can.
Yeah. There wasn't
it was pre-social media. So we thought if it went up in flames, no one would ever know. We would just come home and do something else.
Bill actually skipped his grad school graduation to launch the business.
It's incredible. And now we have our daughter's graduation pretty much the same.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it was one of those things we went in with a dozen or so.
Eight.
Was it 8?
We had 8 quilts.
I thought it was 12.
Not even.
Oh, gosh.
We had 8 quilts. We didn't even have a full-fledged studio then. We'd made them in our basement.
On the low-end Bernina.
Yeah.
And at some point I went around, we just had quilts. We were only doing quilts. And we weren't doing any patterns. We weren't in a hobby quilt world because we didn't see anything that looked like modern in the craft, like hobby quilt world. And we're like, they're not interested in what we're doing.
We had created a company with the idea of doing commissions and design work.
And stuffing for galleries and museum shops.
Which is kind of a world we understood more and saw ourselves fitting into.
Yeah, but it was really funny because there was a lot of press there at this show. And I went to the bathroom and I came back and I could see somebody with a press badge talking to Bill, and she was saying, okay, and you could do 6 different pillow designs for, it was then called Home Magazine, I think. It was Interior Design Magazine. And Bill said, yeah, we could get that to you,
next
month or 2 months or whatever. And then she left, and I thought, what is he talking about? And then after she left, I went over and I said, we don't do pillows. And Bill said, well, we do now. And that was the sort of quick sloppiness of starting a business.
And it was, as we said, it was before social media. So it was all about the in-person contacts. If you wanted someone to see your work, you kind of had to get it in magazines. And I gotta say, we did a pretty good job.
We did.
We were in New York Times.
Yeah.
We were in
Oprah's magazine,
Time Magazine.
Magazine.
So,
Yeah.
And the world has evolved, and we realized over the 24 years that, well, we kind of helped make a place for modern quilting to be more widespread, and we realized how much we enjoyed working with all the quilters like you.
But it also, 9/11 was the big thing that we had the day before at the American Folk Art Museum and the
American Craft
American
Museum,
Craft
now
Museum.
Museum of Art and Design.
Yeah, it's changed its name. We had a ton of orders, and we were in, we'd just gotten on September 10th. We'd gotten a bunch of orders from those two museums. September 11th happened. We got, calls from the cell phones of the buyers there canceling the orders. And we just sort of realized overnight that our business had to change. And so we had a show at a gallery nearby, and we just photocopied a little thing for classes, that we were going to have classes in our studio. And suddenly they sold out immediately, saying modern quilts. And then Bill actually had a cancer scare at that time, and after we realized that it wasn't cancer, we were both exhausted from 9/11 and the business and the cancer scare and everything. And I said, if the terrorists are going to kill us, could they kill us on the way to Hawaii? So we got these cheap.
It was when they were trying to lure people back
to tourism.
Fly, and it was $375 round trip from Chicago to Hawaii. And
let them kill us on the way.
We're going.
And we were also in the adoption process at that point, which was also a long process. But anyway, while we were in Hawaii, we got a phone call asking for somebody to ask us if we would write a book on modern quilting. And we sat there in our swimsuits in a conference call, agreeing to write our first book. So, this whole journey is been filled with adventure and
life, totally unpredictable.
Yeah.
And we've had some really wonderful times along the way.
And some heartbreak, for sure.
And although we haven't updated it, when we put this on YouTube, I will include at the end of it an up next link to the video we did a few years ago, where we did a little montage of 200 quilts over 20 years.
Yeah.
So if you've never watched that, we put that together. I mean, it's amazing. I looked at it the other day, and I thought, so much has happened in the last 4 years.
I know.
And so maybe for the 25th, we'll do a fresh version of that.
Well, the thing that I will say, if you watch that video, is please don't ask us for patterns that aren't on our website, because there are 200 different. Some of them have patterns, and some of them were commissions, but don't expect there to be patterns for everything that you see in that slideshow, because not everything lends itself to a pattern, and you'd hate us.
Yeah.
Some of them you would just hate us.
There are a lot of quilts not a lot, but there are quilts that we don't show simply because that we love, but we try to avoid the question sometimes.
Yeah.
So
there was also a period that many of you, because this is sort of pre-social media, for a period we worked with an organization for adults with developmental disabilities, and doing, I guess, a small scale manufacturing of blankets, like baby blankets that were two layers of flannel, and it enabled employment for 8 people with developmental disabilities, and we ran that for how many? It was like 4 or 5 years. That was in the New York Times also. And
it was a wonderful program, and unfortunately,
really
the state of Illinois' funding that
their
provided
transportation,
their transportation for them to get their jobs dried up, and unfortunately that stopped. It was an amazing program.
But we've really tried to do a lot of different things over the past 24 years, and I think you saw this year with the modern mystery quilt, that we're moving more online, and unfortunately, as we've seen in the last couple of months, including last night with the Vermont Quilt Festival,
Well, people may
saying
not
that
know.
there. Oh, I posted.
I know, but
That there are a lot of in-person events that will no longer be happening. So I know Shipshawana, and I think there's one of the West Coast shows is also closing, and the Vermont Quilt Festival. So I think more and more online is going to be the best way for you to see us and to see quilting in general. And I know it's not the same, but we're going to try to make it fun for you.
oh, that's our goal.
Yes,
Exactly. That's in the future.
Exactly.
Hopefully it's in the past, present, and future.
Yes. So we have a couple of questions that came up that were sort of like general questions that I want to talk about. One is, how do we transfer ideas from patterns from inspiration that we see into a pattern that's sewable? Mm-hmm. And do you want to kick off that?
This is a question that comes in many forms, but people, there are a lot of quilters who love to find their pattern, adapt a pattern, follow a pattern, and others who like to try to create their own new ideas. And so when there are different ways of doing this, sometimes people are inspired by a tile they see and they want to kind of sketch out the tile and make it into a quilt. Other times they have a concept that becomes a quilt. For us, it's this balancing act of what is the idea and how does fabric behave? Because ultimately, if you're trying to make a quilt, you have to be able to cut up fabric and sew it back together to make forms. So we grabbed two examples to respond to that question. And the one I'm going to start with
is from issue 8.
From issue 8 of Modern Quilts Illustrated. And it's our quilt called Jewel Box. So the concept for Jewel Box was the simple idea that if you go into a jewelry store, you often see a ring, let's say there's an emerald ring, and it's very often in a white or black velvet lined box. Very simple. And the idea is that, especially with the black, the setting, the way it's presented, shows off those beautifully cut facets and the way the light comes through. But we weren't interested in making a quilt that was, say, paper piece with 15 different or 20 different facets, and we weren't trying to make a picture of the ring. We were taking that inspiration and asked ourselves, how do you take that idea and make it a quilt? And so as Weeks and I have talked about a lot, in a quilt like this, the idea was, we wanted to capture the luminosity. We wanted to refer to kind of, jewel tone colors that you find in gemstones, but it needed to be a very doable form. So in this case, the form was just the circle where you could have a half or a quarter taken out and a sense of light coming through it.
There are lots of people who have taken this idea in a different direction, and they do the facets and paper piecing, and
it's kind of a literal.
Yeah, it's a totally different approach, but a lot of what we have tried to do over the years is make things that can be machine washed and dried, that you can, I don't want to say, we have some things that are simple and we have some things that are very complex. And so we like to have that skill set. We like to have the time it takes to complete the quilt, and in a variety of fast to long, and then kind of on a different axis, XY axis, to be able to have skills, that a beginner friendly quilt as well as more advanced quilts. And so we're always looking for a balance to make sure that in our publications, somebody who's maybe an advanced sewer but needs to finish something quick can do that, and that would be a good example. Or somebody who is a beginning quilter who is willing to put a lot of time in it but just needs a lot of straight seams to get consistent with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, that there's something for them too.
Absolutely.
So you want to go on to magic inch?
Another idea, with this question of how do you take a concept, an inspiration, and make a quilt. Another one was a quilt we designed called Chorus Line, which is on the cover of Magic Inch Quilts. And this uses our Magic Inch improvisational technique, where this quilt starts out as a series of strips. In this case, it's kind of slightly desaturated teal. And there are a series of solid strips that are the width of the quilt, and we slice in and add a 1 inch, sew in a 1 inch piece so it's finished 1/2 inch. And the idea, if you think about a chorus line, where you have the chorus line often like lots of legs standing and or kicking, and this was very much about proportion. So most people when they look at our quilts may see an abstract form, may see color, but in many cases there was a literal inspiration that it's not about what shoes were they wearing, what color were their costume. It was about a proportion and elegance, repetition. So it has to also be makeable. So in terms of inspiration and how does that lead to a quilt, I think, wouldn't you say it's kind of like taking the time to figure out what inspired you? Not just, if you see a chorus line, not just saying, oh, I love the color, or I like, what is the element that gets you excited?
It reminds me of the graphic design exercise that I think you still do this, where they show in graphic design a box with an A in it, and they say, how much of the A do you need to see in order to recognize that it's an A?
Yeah, so can you crop that A?
So abstracting ideas, that is the thing that for us is the best way to design, because it's kind of like you don't want to be worrying with the chorus line about what shoes they're wearing or what their headdresses were. You want to get the essence of it. And
I'm going to say, this is a quilt called Lemon Meringue.
Yeah.
There are no curves in it. It doesn't look like a pie.
Yeah.
But if you've had a lemon meringue pie, you know that you get those little bits of zest that just they're amazing. And then you have
the white is floating on top of the yellow. And that's all you need to know.
Yeah. So looking at that, some people might say, oh, it's just about the color, but for us it's a little bit more. It's about the depth of the flavor and the contrast.
And our desire, this is a good example, we wanted to make a beginner-friendly quilt that's scrappy, and that somebody who was willing to just spend a lot of time sewing rectangles together could finish, and it's not a traditional.
And we actually have it on our bed right now.
We do. We do.
We have a lot of quilts that we can rotate through, but that one's still it's a great springtime.
It is so nice. Summer.
It's spring to summer. Yeah.
So then we had another question about pre-cuts, and this is such a tricky topic for us. And we actually sat there at breakfast. This is like
we're such geeks.
Yeah, I know. We were just saying, like, how do we explain the whole pre-cut thing, and why? Like, we have fat quarters we work really well with, but why don't you?
Why don't you repeat what the question was?
Well, the question was, I have a jelly roll of your one of your lines, and I don't see any patterns for it. What are your suggestions?
So pre-cuts is a category that includes fat quarters, charm squares, jelly rolls, strip pies. They go by many different names. Layer cakes. Fat quarters are a pre-cut that we find very useful because it's large enough that you can do a lot with it. But I want to start with this specific question, which was about a jelly roll. And these are the 2.5-inch strips that are cut selvage to selvage. We don't have any patterns for them because, and this is a little bit of sacrilege, we don't like them. I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, you shouldn't say that.
we don't like.
We find them very limiting.
Very limiting.
That's the better way to put it.
Okay, so she's like, why did you say that?
Yeah.
They're very limiting. I actually, over breakfast, it was fun because we kind of saw it as a challenge. We came up with some interesting concepts, and we do have suggestions on how you could use them. But I want to talk about why they're limiting first.
Yeah.
The way that jelly rolls are usually done is if there's a new collection, you get 2 or 3 strips of every fabric in that collection rolled up into a very attractive...
In equal amounts.
And sometimes not equal. Sometimes they're 2 of one fabric, 3 of another. And I think the reason they're limiting, that we really talked this out earlier, is that as fabric designers, we design fabrics to have different roles. There might be something that's intentionally darker than all the others so it can give good edge as a binding or a sashing. There might be one print or 5 prints that are larger scale that attract a bit more attention. But when you cut everything up into the exact same size, they're no longer differentiated as easily.
Well, basically we've designed a line so you have a series of fabrics that work together for piecing, and then there's one that will stand in the background a little bit for a background fabric, whether it's, you mentioned the dark ones, but some of the light ones also, because sometimes you need a background fabric, and so we've designed them, the whole line. We don't get to say in what goes in the jelly rolls, in what proportions or anything. So what happens is that we've designed it so these fabrics you need this much of, and then this background fabric you'd want a lot of.
4 times as much.
And then this other dark one you might want for a binding or something. And so when they're all put in the exact same proportion in a very narrow width, it kind of defeats the point of the way that the line was designed.
Yeah, it's a little like if you had a recipe that called for equal quantities of everything.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you were only given one measuring spoon and it was a tablespoon or something, or
you can only use vegetables, but some of them are very strong flavors and some are very mild. Some unexpected things might happen. Now, as designers, it can be a fun challenge.
Yeah.
And the reality is people do have these jelly rolls. So, I mean, I have a couple strategies for approaching it. One that we talked about is, given that there are all these constraints, everything's the same size, the same proportion, rather than fight that, go with it. And one of the most kind of traditional blocks, which is fence rail, where you have blocks at 90 basket weave. It can look great. I mean, it's a traditional block, but there's a reason it's been around so long.
But it's perfect for that proportion.
It's great for that proportion.
And you can use that darker fabric or that lighter fabric strategically as a design decision.
So let's say you have 5 strips that make up a square. You can set out your jelly roll and kind of sort it. Maybe half of, some of them are light, some of them are dark. Maybe you'll always have a dark in the center so that when you rotate it 90 degrees, there's a structure. Or maybe there's a lot more light than dark, and you do the center light, then the next 2 dark, and then the next 2.
I think I figured it out. This is the best way.
Okay, she's got it.
We've designed fabrics for certain rolls in a quilt. And when it's cut up in a jelly roll or a layer cake as all equals, it kind of wrecks that hierarchy that we've set up. And what you need to do if you're using those pre-cuts is introduce the hierarchy back into whatever quilt.
That's a great way.
Right?
That's exactly it. You need
That's
to.
exactly it. You need to figure out, because it's not going to make sense. You can't use, if there's like...
They're not equivalent.
They're not equivalent. And when everything is the same size, then everything is the same in the quilt, and we haven't designed it that way. And most quilt designers don't design it that way. They're usually doing the focus fabric and the companion prints, and that focus fabric is going to really be lost unless you put it in an intentional placement.
Frame it with
exactly.
And I think
so. Let us know if this is making sense to you.
Yeah.
We're very clear.
Yeah, we're suddenly talking to each other. Like, yeah, oh, you're there too. But the other thing is, when people buy fat quarters, it's very easy to pull them out and mix and match. When you have that jelly roll, it becomes a little unmanageable quickly when you untie it. That said, if you have two jelly rolls that look good together, they can be totally different lines, you might take them out and sort them and see if there's a structure that comes up, because...
Sort them carefully because they stretch.
But one of the things you might do is...
Makes perfect sense. Good, okay. Thank you.
One of the things I could imagine is you could create your own fabric. Let's say you have two sets of jelly rolls. Maybe there's an ombre that you didn't know that goes from light to dark. Maybe you can alternate light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, make strip sets and cut them into checkerboards. Or
you have your jelly roll and then you get 3 yards of a solid, and then you have the whatever pattern you're using come together where the solid gives the structure, the repeating structure. So basically, and it kind of goes back to Anne's question earlier about, inspiration that's sewable. What you often want to have is some kind of visual structure to make sure that the quilt holds together.
And I think here's part of the tension, I think, too. People often buy the jelly rolls because they want to be told, okay, now here's a quick jelly roll pattern. Yet, often the way to make a jelly roll successful takes more thought.
Yeah.
Because there
Absolutely.
are all these companies out there, pattern designers, fabric companies, that have jelly roll friendly quilt patterns that just don't work most of the time.
But the thing is, even the ones that work, the problem is that if we design a pattern and it has 24 fabrics in it, there's no consistency. The only consistency in the jelly roll is the width of it.
It's the size, period.
It isn't the number of strips in there. So you buy a jelly roll and it's got, we designed something for 24 fabrics, and you buy a jelly roll that has 36 fabrics in it, and then you're frustrated because it doesn't, you end up with all this waste. So that's what Bill was...
I'm glad the visual structure makes sense, Karen, because to us, that's very much what it is. And now, after saying I'm not a fan, now I'm excited. I want to go over it. I've got to say, we actually do have some jelly rolls sitting around the studio that were given.
I think we just have one. We just have one.
Okay, I thought we had more that have been here for so long, because we tend to overlook. And I'll tell you the other thing that makes me a little nervous.
Because we got something to talk about.
I really like to pre-wash absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And jelly rolls are problematic. When we've used, I think we used them once. We did pre-wash them, putting them in a delicates bag. But they're really not made for that. Yeah. So anyway, if you have your jelly roll, take a little time, gently lay them out, and rather than look for a pattern, look at what is the structure you can make.
Exactly.
And
commonalities.
Then have fun with it.
Okay.
Okay. Now, next.
I don't think you're ready for this.
Am I?
I don't know. I don't think you saw this coming. But are you ready? There's going to be a summer mystery quilt. Bam!
Fun.
What? Okay. It's called Summer Camp. And it's starting June 1st. And we are so excited.
And the idea here is that we, like you, probably want to make use of every bit of summer. Yeah. And for many people, summer, it's like, but I don't quilt in the summer, I quilt in the winter.
Yeah.
We're making a really fun, easy, but totally unique.
Unlike anything you've ever done before.
And we kind of said that with the Modern Mystery Quilt in
that
January.
was true.
And that was true.
Yeah.
But
this is even going to be crazier.
Crazier in the way it's done. We wanted the process. Well, the process is going to be really different.
Yeah.
It's hard. I want to tell you more. But it's a mystery.
So here's we're going to have graphics and a whole layout and thing, but we wanted to tell you first because it's so exciting, and we want you to be thinking about whether this is something you want to participate in. So it's going to start June 1st, and it's going to run for 6 weeks. Like the Modern Mystery Quilt, there will be video tutorials and
but shorter, because it's much simpler,
easier,
not lots of technical challenge.
Clues will be given at noon and not midnight because Bill doesn't want to stay until midnight, which is understandable. And then we're going to have, we'll have it on the Modern Quilt Studio Patterns and Fabrics page, and we will have a post day like we did where everybody posts. We'll have that at the beginning of September, right at the end of summer. Northern Hemisphere summer, I should say. This is going to be very confusing for the Australians.
Oh, yes. Sorry, Australians.
But it'll run from June 1st to the beginning of August. Then you'll have a month to finish it. And if you want to be part of the online gallery, we'll have an online gallery for it. Yay! Yeah. So, yes, exactly. This is going to be really community based. We loved the whole way in which people supported each other on the Facebook page. But if you're an Instagram person, stay on Instagram. That's fine. You don't need to participate. It's just an option.
And I will say also that, back to the fact that it's during the summer, we're very aware that there are going to be weeks where you're traveling, where you're working on business projects, that it's not going to be a big deal if you miss a week. There's plenty. You'll be able to catch up. This is meant to be fun and not a stress.
Right. And
once again, it's going to be stash friendly.
So Linda's asking about kits. This is really hard for me because I guess I thought you didn't want kits, basically, from the feedback we got from the last mystery quilt, because people seem to want to use their stashes so much. But would we be open to kits? I think
should we tell it's going to be stash friendly. We are going to be making it out of our solid stash. Yeah. You don't have to at all. The pattern will work well with small to medium scale prints. There'll be plenty of room for doing things differently. I think with the idea that you asked about kits, Linda, one thing we might do is kind of have either a kit or a suggestion based on some fat quarter bundles.
I think we can work with
you.
We
will
on
absolutely.
That because this is. So I just made a list because I know. Do you have to have your completed before you let us out? No, we're happy to take. I feel like a bit of a drug dealer right now. But I just wanted to give you, because I know you've got to make your decisions, and I have a list of the no's and yeses that will help you understand without giving anything away.
She's very organized.
So fun. Okay. There will be no paper piecing. There will be no applique. There will be no required handwork. If you want to make the whole thing through handwork, you can, but you don't have to. We will not be using large-scale prints. So really encourage you to hear that, because the scale of the pieces and things is not good for that. There will be size variations per your requests. Finished block sizes. We're not doing that again. A very unusual process.
This is going to be so process oriented.
Nothing close to anything you've done before. So you're going to have to
the sewing will be very familiar. It's that how you get there won't be.
Yeah, and
trust us.
You're gonna really need to come at this with a good sense of humor.
Yes.
And a good sense of adventure, because this ain't anybody else's quilt along, so, or mystery quilt. It will be unique to you. There will be no two people will have the same quilt in the end. There will also be, it's stash friendly, but you can also have, you will need some yardage of at least one fabric. But because of the way this is going to work, and I know this is just hang with me on this. We're going to encourage you to have some fabric that you make some units with, a palette, and then you're going to want some other fabric
later.
And we're going to encourage you to not plan on buying that right now, or
selecting it because you may have it in your stash.
Yeah, but you might end up with a different size. People might end up with different sizes depending on
different needs.
Yes, yeah. There will be videos, weekly videos included. It will still be $25, which I agree is a bargain. We'll still have the Facebook.
Especially for summer camp.
Yes, exactly. It'll be a similar setup. We're hoping to that people now know to check their spam filters for emails, and we will get through it. Sometimes we think that maybe you guys kind of crashed our site last time.
Well, I think what happens is when you have any big event, 98% of the people have absolutely no technical problems, and 2% do for different reasons. But we got through it all, and I think it worked pretty smoothly.
So can you give more direction regarding color theory for choosing fabric? Yes, we will. We've talked about maybe even doing like an add-on color workshop, like a one day, but I don't think we're gonna have time to do. We will give a lot of advice.
Our goal is always for people to be successful.
Yeah.
So it's great having that question because it helps remind us. I think when we're trying to do a process that's very different, as I said, the sewing will be very straightforward for the most part. I think there'll definitely be twists, but the pattern is going to be a very different process and is meant to be fun. So because when there's something new like the process, we want to make sure that something like the choosing fabric, that you go in with confidence, so it's not too many variables.
Yeah. Debbie says this is a good excuse to buy the 100 solids big box. Yes, it is. But but I do want to ask Patricia. I think what I want to make sure I understand your question, because are you asking for specific colors? I think this is what is challenging for us, is that we want to make it stash friendly, and we hear you when you say that you don't want to have a quilt that looks like everybody else's. And so we're trying to be super flexible in terms of allowing people to choose palettes that they like and that they might have in their stash. But I don't want that to be perceived as not giving you sufficient direction. Well, so
I think also, like last time we did the modern mystery quilt, one thing that I think I understood from feedback was that it was really helpful when we showed several sample palettes at the beginning. So even if you didn't want one of those palettes, you understood relationships.
Yeah, so she says, more how to choose fabrics that go well together, value and such. Okay. So what we did last time was we had groups of palettes that would work and wouldn't work, but especially because we will be using solids, we will be really going, I think, a little bit more into color theory, because it isn't just about scale and that kind of thing. However, one of the things that I think is kind of like, it's kind of like the, what were those books that, we used to have when we were in college that had the summary of all of
Cliff Notes.
The Cliff Notes. The Cliff Notes would be like our palettes of the month. That, if you look on our website, you've got all those kind of starter palettes that start with 10 colors. That, I think I need a color class. And this is the thing, is that we were trying to figure out, summer is just sneaking up on us so fast, and we were trying to figure out, should we do a color class first?
We won't do a color class first for this summer, but we kind of have that.
We'll build it. We'll build in as much as we possibly can.
Because I think us. We don't want to just be so A to B. We don't
want to just give you paint chips and say, "Oh, we'll match this," because.
But
I think what's cool is the diversity that we saw.
One of the things that some quilters did with the last mystery quilt, and I think is actually a good approach, if you're nervous about color and you happen to like the palette we're working with, it's okay to use the same palette and say, I'm going to work along and kind of learn by doing and see how these relationships work. I often use the analogy in my design classes for students who are not designers but writers. So think of it as when you have a writing class and you have an assignment to write a page or a chapter in the style of Faulkner or a Hemingway or a Achebe, that the goal isn't to make you another Chinua Achebe. The goal is for you to understand his structure, his cadences. And so sometimes if you're inspired by a palette that another quilter posts or that we're working with, there is no shame in being a copycat and saying, like, I love that palette. I'm going to work with it. I'm going to learn from it. And building over time. Or using Kit. That's absolutely a great way to learn.
And this is why I think that, we might be amenable to kits if there are people who want them. Because I know a lot of people don't have a ton of solids in there, but you could also use tone and tones. I want to make sure that
you absolutely don't need to work with solids. That's why I want to say we're doing that, but we're going to show you options. Yeah. And so.
But if you have a ton of Civil War fabrics, that'll work too.
Oh yeah. In general, the patterns we do aren't fabric dependent 99% of the time. Yeah. So it's about visual structure and relationships.
Things fall apart, but not quilts. Exactly.
That is hysterical.
So anyway, we are super excited about this, and we've decided. Okay, so the theme is summer camp, and we're going to be having some camp themed activities as part of the Quilt Along, and one of them might be that we might have some little campfire talks at night occasionally.
Just little chances to
then we might do that through Zoom or something like that.
We'll figure that out.
I
think like a true summer camp, we have a good structure, but we don't really know what will happen until all the campers arrive.
But we will have our whistles ready.
We will, and we think it'll probably be it'll be a little smaller because it's summer. Yeah. But it should be, just because of you all, it'll be a lot.
Yeah, we're assuming it's going to be a smaller group, but hey, we thought that the Modern Mystery Quilt was going to have maybe 200 people. Yeah. It's well over 1,000 now, so you just never know. But we started out as we were kind of, brainstorming this with this phrase, easy breezy. And that's really what we want it to be. We want this to be a light, fun, unusual, very, we want to build in community. I think one of my big takeaways from the Modern Mystery Quilt was the seeing people, especially Debbie Chen, we will give you a shout out, being super supportive of people who are struggling and
you rock,
encouraging.
Debbie.
Yeah, Debbie was really just an incredible voice of calm and reason and reassurance with some people who were
Set a great tone.
thrown by the fact that we do things so differently. And some people are like, bring it on, and then other people it provokes anxiety in them. And so it was just the community that we saw. We really want to foster that, especially in the summer, because this should be a lighthearted, fun experience.
Yeah, we're in Chicago. Summer's too short. It's got to be fun.
Yeah. So we will have, when we see you next on June 1st, we will have the fabric requirements and the initial instructions ready for the first round.
And I'm sorry.
And then we'll have a 2-week gap.
That's what I was going to say.
For you to be able to take your time and get things together. But I think you saw that this is not going to be, the idea is for it to be fun. And if you are traveling or whatever, you can jump right back in and catch up.
Yeah, And we thought that system last time worked pretty well. The first installment, giving everyone 2 weeks to get settled and ask questions.
And get fabric if you want.
And then have kind of a weekly rollout after that. And this week said at noon, not midnight.
But we hope that you will join us for, it's been, I know, I keep thinking, as I've been thinking about this, I've been thinking about that line from Here Comes the Sun, about it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. And I think for many of us, the past few years have been that, kind of cold, lonely winter at times. And I just feel like this is a great time, whether you are traveling or whether you're at home, or regardless of your health situation, family situation, that you can have a place to go for, a few hours a week to work on something fun for you, and to have some laughs with other people in our quilting group. I think it'll be a lot of fun. So we're going to be rolling out graphics to you in a few weeks, and we will, when we see you on June 1st at noon, we will be answering questions.
We'll be ready.
We think it's going to be a blast. And if you're not having a blast with this event, then we need a different discussion, because this is going to be so much fun.
So that's our future. So as we're looking at past, present, and future, we're thinking as far ahead as summer right now.
Yeah. Well, we're thinking for next.
We've got a lot of other.
This isn't the last thing that you're going to do with us, we hope. But we do hope you'll join us and make some time for some fun with us this summer. So
I hope it's a wonderful month for you all.
And if you are a beginning quilter, or you're a rusty quilter, or you're a quilter who is nervous about craftsmanship, this will be easy breezy. This is going to be available to everyone. So we can't wait.
Great.
So
we look forward to it all.
Thanks for all your great comments and letting me. I guess there is crying in quilting. Thank you for understanding my for giving me my mom moment. But it's a big month, so
it is. It'll be a wonderful one. So
thank you so much for joining us. We will see you soon.
Bye-bye.